Okay, David, we are rolling today.
Tell me exactly where we ended.
Today is October 21st, 2004. We're at your house in Nayod in Jerusalem. And this is our 5th interview. And where we left off last time was you and Frida rushing down to Gan Soccer, being picked up in a plane. The whole incident that happened there with the major and your friend the pilot, and basically we were just about to take off in the airplane, and that is where we left off.
Okay. When we came down in Tel Aviv, we didn't know quite where to go, so our friend Jerry, the pilot, and his wife were staying in a small hotel. The Air Force had put him into the hotel to stay. So we spent one night, all 4 of us in bed, fully dressed of course. And then I reported to the Air Force headquarters the next morning.
Where was the Air Force headquarters?
The Air Force headquarters was in the Yarkon Hotel. It was on Yarkon Street. It no longer exists, but there's a plaque there. That's where the Air Force headquarters was. And I reported to them and immediately set to work planning the code and ciphers department of the Air Force.
Before we get to that,
yeah.
Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, it's night and day. Like you're coming from a city that's in a siege, and you're coming to a city that's like...
You're right. Let me...
Tell me a little bit about that. It must have been a little bit of a shock.
When we met with Jerry and Beatty, the first thing they did was to take us out for something to eat. And there was something called the Brooklyn Ice Cream Bar. We hadn't had ice cream in months and months, maybe years. So we went to the Brooklyn Ice Cream Bar, and I ordered the fanciest, biggest parfait I could get, and Frida ordered something, and we sat there at the table eating, and a young woman passed by us and looked at what I was eating, and she came over to our table, and in an angry voice she said, "How can you eat something like that when the people in Jerusalem are starving?" And my friend Beatty said, "They just came from Jerusalem." She said, "Oops," and she left. Incidentally, going into the Brooklyn Bar, there was an onion lying in the gutter. Frida and I bumped our heads, both of us leaning down to pick up that onion. We hadn't seen an onion in months. We hadn't seen many fresh vegetables in a month. So we had the ice cream, and when she said, "How can you eat that while they're starving in Jerusalem?" both Beatty and I and Jerry, who were all born at the same time said, "The starving children in Armenia." When we grew up, if we didn't eat everything on our plate, our parents would say, "Think of the starving children in Armenia." And although we could never figure out how our eating our food would help them, we nevertheless would finish the food. So she said, they're starving in Jerusalem and you're eating in Tel Aviv. What good would they do Jerusalem if we didn't eat in Tel Aviv?
So was it really like, was Tel Aviv at that time like, it was a happening city, no?
Tel Aviv was an open city. Nothing, you couldn't tell there was a war going on in Tel Aviv. By the way, there are a few things, no, I'm sorry, that's when we came back. So the Air Force assigned me my place in...
So I want you to tell me a little bit more, just a little bit in detail, because you mentioned your friend Jerry a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about him and his wife.
Well, I gave his name Beatty Runoff if you get in touch with her. But Jerry was a friend of mine from young Judea. He was in Shreveport, Louisiana. I was in Atlanta, but we had...
So he was a southern boy.
Shreveport, Louisiana, how southern can you get?
Mexico.
And we had intercity meets and conferences and conventions, so Jerry and I got to know each other. And when I was in the Air Force in India, I began to get letters from a girl named Beatty in Atlanta that Jerry was beginning to pay a lot of attention to her and take her out, wanting to take her out, and she wanted to know if I knew Jerry. So I wrote her back I know Jerry very well, and I like him, but he's not a serious person, and I wouldn't want you to get serious with him and then to get hurt, so be careful of Jerry. Years later, when I met her and Jerry and their 4 children, she said to me, should I take him seriously yet?
So you guys were like very good friends.
Very good friends.
And he came to, and he was a fighter pilot in the U.S. Army?
No, he...
Or he was a pilot?
I guess Biddy will tell you the whole story, but he washed out on the second round of pilot training. They never told anybody why they washed out. They just, and they let him fly light aircraft, which he did. And all his life he was determined to show the American Air Force that they were wrong about him. He got licenses in every kind of airplane you can, including helicopters. And one day he decided that he would show the American Army. He arranged with the Israeli Air Force authorities to line up on the tarmac at Stay Dove outside Tel Aviv, all kinds of different airplanes. And he was to get in every plane, fly it for 15 minutes, come down, run to the next plane, fly it for 15. He wanted to get in the Guinness Book of Records that he had flown more planes in one day than anybody else. And he flew those planes. To his great sorrow and regret, the Guinness Book of Records wrote back, we have no such category. So this was Jerry, the one that flew me.
What's Jerry's last name?
Renov.
Renov.
R-E-N-O-V, yeah.
And so
he's the one that met me at Haifa Port and showed the laundry list to the Arab, and he's the one that met us.
So it was good to have him here.
Oh yes, oh yes.
So you get to Tel Aviv with Frida, and they're kind of like.
He's in the Israeli Air Force. we slept in the same bed in the hotel until the Air Force gave us housing.
The 4 of you.
Yeah, the Air Force gave us housing in the penthouse of the Yarden Hotel on Keren Kayemet Street in Tel Aviv. It's a luxurious room with a view and a porch and everything, and I was pretty pleased to have it, of course. And one day after we'd been there a very short time, the proprietor came over to me and said, you're an officer. You can make the Air Force pay me for the hotel. They haven't paid me in months and I need the money. I said, I have nothing to do with money. I don't even know where the money comes from in the Army. He said, well, try. So I pretended to try, and I said, look, I tried. It did no good. He said, well, I can go on like this. And I came home the next night and found all of our stuff had been moved out of that penthouse room to a first floor back room without a balcony. The Air Force wasn't going to pay him, he wasn't going to take care of the Air Force. Also, there was an orchestra in that hotel, and they played on the outside in an outside cafe at night.
Try to explain to me exactly where this is in Tel Aviv. Rehov Keren Kayemet.
Rehov Keren Kayemet, and it's not on Ben Gurion. I forgot. It may be Lazarov. I don't remember exactly.
So it's in the old north part of Tel Aviv?
Oh yeah, it's way out in Tel Aviv. Yeah, it was way out. It's since changed its name. Anyway, there was an orchestra that played in a cafe outside, and they played until the last patron left. And one day, one of the Air Force officers went down to the band leader, and he said, look, we fly. We fly almost every day. We need our sleep. We fly for long hours, we need our sleep. You've got to stop that music at least at 11 o'clock at night. The band leader said, I can't do that. It's my band, I'll do what I want to. We're going to play. So they played the next night. They didn't play the following night because he got a group of friends. They came into the cafe with their pistols, and they said to the orchestra leader, we're going to put a bullet through every instrument you have if you don't stop playing at 11 o'clock. We had dead silence after 11 o'clock after that.
So you moved to Tel Aviv, completely different scene.
Of course, we walked through the streets without fear. The cars didn't have covers on their lights. Buildings didn't have blast walls in front of them. There were no vessels on the street to collect water from the water carrier. It was civilization again. And there was food.
There was food.
Yeah, Tel Aviv, yeah, they didn't suffer. The water supply, the electric supply, everything.
Everything was
so it was moving from hell to heaven as well.
Tell me about your new position in the Air Force. Because up until now you're in the Haganah.
Yeah.
You are in that little the squad room in Jerusalem. You went on some missions. Now you are in the Air Force. What is your rank? What is your position?
My ultimate rank was a squadron leader. I don't remember what my first rank was, something lower than a squadron leader. But that's a title, it's not a job. I didn't fly. I was in charge of organizing a codes and ciphers department so the British and the Arabs would not be able to read our communications. Now, since the course I had taken in New York, which I told you previously about, the partisan course, I'd become an expert in codes and ciphers. And it was in Jerusalem that I met the men from South Africa that put me in touch with the Air Force. So I set about organizing the Air Force, and the first thing I did, I told the commander of the Air Force that I needed...
Who was the commander of the Air Force at the time?
Aaron Remez. Aaron Remez.
Aaron Remez.
Yeah. And I told him I needed 30 English-speaking people to work on codes and ciphers, because the Air Force worked in English because of all the foreign pilots. And he said, well, they had an air watch department, people sitting on roofs waiting to watch airplanes to spot if planes were coming in. He said, we've got so many of those people up there, and so far not a plane has come in. So he called in the head of the air watch department, whose name was Zev, and Zvi, and he said, Zvi, I want you to move 30 people from your air watch department to Macarov's apartment. Zvi said, 30 people? I'll give you 10. Remez says, look, I want 30 people, I don't want any argument, I need 30 people. Well, if you press me, maybe I can give you 20. He said, Zvi, this is an army, you're not bargaining for land with the Arabs anymore. I want 50 people. In the end, we got 35. And Zvi walked out like a broken man, and Remez says, it's a good thing I knew him from the old days of the bargaining for land, or we wouldn't have got more than 10 people. So we had 35 people.
And you're in charge of this department, is that correct?
Yeah. We had a room in the Yardcon Hotel, 2 rooms actually, the room where they stay on the far from the sea. And as I was getting ready to leave my office...
This is in Jaffa?
No, this is still in the Yardcon Hotel.
And you're going to?
I was going home to the Jordan Hotel. And while I was in the office in the Yardcon Hotel, we were told to walk on the far side of the street as we walked along the street. And before I left the office, one of the guys who had been there before me showed me some gouge marks in the wall. He said these were made by the Eitzel, who was sitting on the roof of the hotel across the street, to keep us from attacking the Altalena. And the Altalena was a ship which the Eitzel brought loaded with arms, and they brought it in order to establish their private army. They wouldn't turn it over the Haganah, and by this time there was a state. They wouldn't even turn it to the state, over to the state. They were going to have their own army to fight the war. And Ben-Gurion even offered to let them have their own units that would be part of the army. They said, no, they had to have their own army. And Ben-Gurion knew if they got those arms, there'd be 2 armies in Israel, and there'd be no... sometimes they'd fight each other, and sometimes they'd fight the enemy. So he ordered the ship bombed. And the reason we were told to walk on the far side of the street was the ship was going to be bombed and there might be some shrapnel or something, and the ship was bombed.
That's a very, the story that you're telling now, that's a very famous.
Oh, very famous.
And
yes.
it's a very.
It's very controversial.
Very controversial.
Yeah.
What you're telling is
I'm
one
telling my
one
side.
side of the story.
Of course.
I've actually heard testimonies that say totally other things, that the Etzel was willing to give up the ammunition. There were
provided it went
there were
only
also 900.
Provided it went only to their own forces.
Whatever. There were also 900 immigrants on board.
What?
There were immigrants on board.
No, there were no immigrants on it. I'll tell you, not at all.
Yeah.
No, none at all.
None at all.
None at all.
Okay.
Only news.
But my question to you is that was the closest. That was the closest time in modern history that Jews shot on Jews, and they say that it started with the cannon that Ben Gurion fired at the ship,
Well,
which he later then called the Golden Cannon.
I don't know how it could have been a cannon. The ship was at sea. The ship was bombed by the Air Force. I'm not an expert on this,
Sure.
but from my point of view, what I learned there was the Air Force bombed the ship. We were told not to walk on that street because they knew that was coming.
Do you remember anything else from that day?
That day?
Yeah.
No, it was. Look, we'd been under fire for so many years that another day of tension didn't really mean very much.
But there was tension between Jews. There was a fear of a civil war breaking out.
Nobody knew that. Only the Eitzel and the Haganah knew that. Nobody knew what was going on. There's no publication that the Eitzel's bringing in a ship or the ship has nothing at all. It was just brought in secret, and it was supposed to be unloaded in secret. So we didn't know anything.
Do you know the famous photographer Robert Capa?
Of course.
He was on the beach, and he took pictures.
Was he?
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, he happened to be because he was covering the war,
Uh-huh.
and he just was.
Well, how did he miss me?
Yeah. So the war. So during the time of the war, you're also establishing these.
Cipher stations.
Were you at any time under attack? Was there any time that you went to one of these places to install these stations and?
No.
They brought you in when it was relatively secure in these places.
Well, there had been a fight. That happened, that I was never there at a time when anything happened.
And you're traveling around the country at this time of the war.
Let me go back a little bit first. I told you how we made the ciphers. We had the 35 people in the room at night. And one night when everybody was finished and left, one girl came to me and she said, "I'd be willing to keep working, or I could even help you clean up." And she was very suggestive, the way she talked. So I said, "Well, I think I can probably clean up by myself." She said, "There's some things that take two people." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry I can't stay till later. My wife's waiting for me." "Oh, you're married? I didn't know you were married." This is the same gal that was later picked up by the military police for shooting the lock off the door of her house with her station with a pistol. And they brought her to me as her commanding officer. I said, "Why'd you shoot the lock off?" She said, "I just wanted to see if it really worked like it does in the movies, so I shot it off." The next thing I know, I get a call from the from the military police. She has been arrested for shooting dice with the officers behind the mess hall. Now we had a very friendly army. There was very little what the army would call chicken shit. There was very little. It was great fraternity. Nobody saluted. If they saluted, it was sort of a half-end sort of thing. And so the fact that she was shooting with officers was not a terrible...
Was shooting what?
Shooting dice.
Gambling.
Yeah, was not a terrible crime. And I decided I wouldn't get involved in that. So I said, well, she's shooting dice with the officers, it's their problem. He said, yeah, but we know she's cheating, we just can't catch her. So I told her, stop shooting dice with the officers.
Was she a Sabra? No, she was a...
Oh, she was one of the American volunteers.
So
yeah.
most of the people that worked for you, under you in the Air Force, they were mostly Americans?
No, Americans, England, South Africans. And then there was a young lady from Mexico who was sent to me. And, no, first there was one lady from Europe that was sent to me. And I said, you speak English? She said, yes. And German, and Dutch, and Italian, and Hebrew. I said, my God, you're out of place here. You should be in the censorship something. And I sent her over back. They sent her back again with the message that she's not unusual. Many people are like that in Israel. She was born in Russia. She moved to Germany. She had to leave Germany and went to England. She managed to she was in a DP camp in Italy. And then she came to Israel. She learned all those languages on the way, and she's not the only one that's had that kind of experience. So I took her into the office. We had another one who came to me after she had been accepted, and she said, I have to confess something to you. I said, what's that? She said, I'm not Jewish. I said, so what? She said, doesn't upset you? I said, no. She said, you don't care? I said, no, why should I? She said, oh, I thought maybe you wouldn't want me if you suspect me of something I wasn't Jewish. I said, go do your work and do it well, that's all I want from you. First time I had come into a fear of anti-Semitism, reverse anti-Semitism. The Jews would reject Gentiles instead of Gentiles rejecting Jews. Years after the war, we met her and her husband in Mexico, and we both laughed about that incident. What else can I tell you about the codes and ciphers? Oh, we had friends, Mari and Miriam. He was a South African, had been a traffic policeman or something like that. And we were friends, and his wife came to work in my department in Jaffa. Now, we had a code room in Jaffa, which had a window and a door. And it was very hot in there because there was no air. So I had a fan put in for them. But the instructions were very clear. You do not leave this office until you've drawn the curtain on the window and made sure the door is locked behind you. And so for a while we had no problem. Then one day, Molly comes to me, Miriam comes to me hesitatingly and stutteringly, and said, I can't find the code book. I said, what do you mean you can't find the code book? It's in the office. She said, well, I had to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, the code book was gone. I had walked by the office while she was in the bathroom, and I found the window open, the curtain not pulled over, and the code book sitting on the table right next to the window. So I had taken the code book out. So she came in and told me that she couldn't find the code book. And after I left her in confusion for a while, I told her that I had the code book and I was having her put on charge, was being charged with derelict duty. And she would be court-martialed. And that night her husband, great big fella, came up to my apartment. He said, I'm going to kill you. I said, what's the matter with you? He says, my wife is not going to be court-martialed. I said, your wife broke security in a most serious way, and in order to show all the others how serious it is, she has to be court-martialed. We were on the roof on the porch of my building. He said, I'm going to throw you off the porch. So I got back in the house, and he said, today is Sunday. By tomorrow night, if that court-martial isn't canceled, I'm going to come here and kill you. I didn't know what to do.
Was he an American guy?
No, South African.
South African.
I didn't know what they called the
He's
police.
like a rugby player.
Oh yeah, big. And I really, leave me alone, just leave me alone. I really didn't know what to do. Should I call the police? Should I run? Should I forgive her? And being an Israeli army officer meant a great deal to me. And following orders was important. And I just couldn't, for personal reasons, let this thing go. So I said, well, he'll come and he'll try to kill me, but there's nothing I can do. That next morning, it was a minor holiday, I don't know, it was Shavuot or last day of Sukkot or something, and Ben Gurion declared a pardon for everybody who had been charged of everything other than a crime of serious crime. So I was off the hook, but I was awfully glad I never gave in. I never gave in.
What does that say about you? About your personality?
You tell me.
I'm asking you. Are you like?
I was an officer of the Israel, Israel patriot. I'd been a Zionist for many years. I'd volunteered for the army. I wasn't about to give all that up. Let a serious slip go by, which could be repeated by other people. I just couldn't do it. So that was one of the adventures in the Air Force in Jaffa. Another adventure happened, different nature entirely. We were, I had to install new ciphers in the station in Abu Ghosh and Mikor Chaim and Snella in Jerusalem. The Air Force didn't have enough light planes to fly me here, so I had to come by road. I came up on the road of courage and had to spend the night. So I went to the hotel on Makov, which is still there, the Palatine Hotel. It was an old-style European hotel. The rooms did not have bathrooms attached. There was one bathroom in the hall for men and one for women. And when I finished my business, I went there to go to sleep. Now, in those days, a toilet was called bet kissé.
Bet kissé.
Bet kissé, the chair room, like the kings used to have. Kings used to have their throne room. This was the chair room because you sat on the seat. So it was called the.
Please continue.
It was called the bet kissé, which meant the toilet. But my Hebrew was so rudimentary that when I walked out in the morning and saw men sweeping the hall, I wanted to ask them where the bathroom was, and I made a mistake. Instead of asking where's the bet kissé, I said, where's the bet Knesset? Bet Knesset's the synagogue. He said, oh, all over the neighborhood. There's one on almost every corner. I think, God, I know it's an old-fashioned hotel, but to have an outdoor privy, that's really too much. And he looked at my face and he realized that I didn't understand him, so he used one of the 4 international words. He said, toilet? I said, toilet. And so
I just want to timeline. I want to just get things kind of in order here, so I just hope that I understand everything.
What can I do? And I want to go back for something I've forgotten.
Please.
While we were living in Jerusalem with this other couple,
On Rehov Ma'alot.
Yeah, Rehov Ma'alot. I'm not sure whether I told you this before. 2 things happened. One thing was the radio announced suddenly, during an announcement in deadpan, straight voice, we have had this cable, which we will read to you. And they read, we, the 34 families and 2,300 Ocean Parkway, Brooklyn, will not pledge ourselves not to sleep until Jerusalem is free. Aryeh began to laugh. Now, our friend Aryeh, he began to laugh. He said, their sleeping is going to help us win the war. So he started for the door, and his wife said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to send them a cable saying, take a short nap. It might be a long flight. The cable office had been closed for months, so he wasn't able to send the cable. But he said the chutzpah, he just couldn't get over it.
Why chutzpah? What was the...
For thinking that they were helping us, not by giving money, not by sending arms, not by coming, but by not sleeping. Anyway, their intentions were good, but they were not received well. The other thing that happened with RDA, one night, a girl in a khaki uniform came to the door and said, RDA? He said, yes. She said, come. He said, come where? She said, just come. He said, okay. He followed her out. This was at night. He didn't come home all night. His wife was frantic. What happened here? Where did he go? What did he do? She would have gone to the Army headquarters to ask, but we didn't know where the headquarters were. It was secret. So all morning, and about the middle of the morning, he comes in and says, oh, my aching feet, my aching back. We said, where were you? He said, I don't know. What'd you do? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know it? After he got his feet in a pail of hot water, he told us that, he said, they put 12 of us on the flatbed truck, drove us out into the hills outside Jerusalem, gave us picks and said, dig. And they showed us where to dig. So we dug. We dug and we dug and we dug. We waited for the truck to come back. Truck didn't come back. We figured at least it'd come back in the morning, take us home. Truck didn't come back to take us home. Finally, we gave up. We walked from outside Jerusalem all the way down to Chov Rupin into the street. Rivka said, what was it all about? He says, damned if I know. I hope somebody will tell me. He said, but if that was a training exercise, that's the damnedest training exercise I've ever had, and I'll never do it again. 2 nights later, young lady shows up at the door and says, RDA, come. He goes out with her again, and the same experience is repeated. He does this 3 times. Then he says, no more, never again. She never came back.
Who was she?
Well, a few weeks after that, we were listening to the broadcast, and Ben Gurion made an announcement that the siege of Jerusalem has been broken. A new road has been built, which we will call the Krish HaGvura, the road of courage. The heroes that built that road were on the other side of an armed Arab village, and they kept quiet and they did their work, and they're the real heroes of the siege of Jerusalem. And Artie listened, he said, I'm a hero. I'm a hero. That's what we were doing out there. We were building that road, so I'm a hero. So I guess he was.
Are we talking about the Burma Road?
No, the Burma Road had been unusable before that. This was in place of the Burma Road. The Burma Road was usable for a very short time and very difficult. They had to have animals to pull the jeeps up, and it was very difficult. But this is in order, because the Jaffa Road was unusable. This Road of Courage was.
Where's the Road of Courage? Where was it from?
It went through Hulda to Wadi, near Bab el-Wad, and then went up.
And that's the road that broke the siege?
Yeah. And, yeah.
And what's the name? There was a very famous American colonel.
Colonel David Marcus. David Stone here, his name is Marcus, yes. He was called David Stone here, his name was Mickey Marcus. Mickey Marcus was in charge of everything, and had complete freedom to make any changes he needed to do, wanted to do, and he really revamped the Israeli forces into a modern military force. He was a colonel, and when they were trying to break the road near Ma'aleh Chamisha, coming into Jerusalem, They were camped outside that road, and he spoke no Hebrew, and he stepped out of the tent to take a leak, to pee. And on his way back to the tent, he was challenged by an Israeli soldier, and he replied in English, "It's all right, son, don't worry about it." And the soldier shot him. And later that soldier wanted to commit suicide, but that was...
Was that a known thing when it happened? Was
No.
it in the news or no?
No.
It was hushed.
Yeah, sure. Hush for both
Have
sides.
you heard, at that time, did you hear about him? Was he known?
Yeah, we knew he had even inspected the Air Force looking for things to change.
Did you ever meet him or?
No, never met him.
So your friend Aryeh was a part of the Haganah
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, he was also a student at Hebrew University, yeah.
And how come they didn't come get you?
Luck of the draw, I guess. I don't know. He was certainly more capable than I was of doing that.
Was he a bigger guy than you?
Much bigger, yeah. Let's see, I jumped back to this. We were in the Air Force, and at one point, I had to change my office in the Yardcone Hotel. While we were still in the Yardcone Hotel, and the head of intelligence and the head of signals got together to tell me that they were moving my office to another place. And I said, well, as long as it doesn't affect my security. And they laughed. They had said to each other, Makarov's answer will be, as long as it doesn't affect my security. And that's what I said.
So you're destined to a future in the Israeli Air Force.
They operated in English. But when the state was established, after the state was established, they moved in, and after the war was over, they no longer needed the foreign pilots and so on. Then they switched to Hebrew, and codes and ciphers in Hebrew was beyond me.
So did you know it was going to be temporary?
No, nobody knew what was going to happen in the future. We'd been in Israel 2 years through the Haganah and the siege of Jerusalem, and the establishment of the state and the end of the war. And Frida's mother, my wife's mother, got sick. We got a cable from the family. Please send a photo of your daughter. Your mother is very sick. We didn't know what that meant, that she was so sick that the only thing that she wanted to see before she died was a picture of her granddaughter, or whether it was such a minor thing that even a picture of the child would take care of it. But Frida's an only child, so the war was over. The Air Force was switching to Hebrew. We decided it was time to come back and take care of her mother. So in 1949 we came back. Even that wasn't easy.
How did you had a very crazy 2 years in Israel, in Palestine.
A very gratifying 2 years.
In which way?
Because I fulfilled what I had intended to do, to build a Jewish state. I was a small cog, but I was a cog.
Looking back at it now, how do you feel about the role that you played in the establishment of the State of Israel?
I'm about to burst with pride. I didn't establish the state. I didn't have a big part in establishing the state. I remember Shakespeare saying to the king, saying to the tardy knight, "Go hang thyself. We fought and you weren't there. I was here."
And when you look at the country now, what do you feel 67 years later about present day?
Again, this time I'll quote Tom Paine. These are times that try men's souls. Now the sunshine shoulder in the summer patriot will shrink from his duty. But those who stand by her now will deserve the love and honor of all people. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily overcome, but we have this consolation before us. The harder the battle, the more glorious the victory. We beat Pharaoh, we beat Nebuchadnezzar, we beat Hitler. We're going to beat this too.
Where is your heart? Is your heart in Jerusalem?
Always. I'm a guide to the Tower of David, which is the history of Jerusalem, and people try to give me tips, and I tell them I do it for love of Jerusalem.
And you lived here in a very difficult time in Jerusalem.
Yes, we did.
Very difficult time. You were here in the siege of 47, 48.
And the Intifada, first Intifada, the second Intifada, the first Gaza attack, the second Gaza attack. We've been through it all. During the siege of Jerusalem, the American consul ordered to take all Americans out. He would give them free conduct through the Arab lines. We refused contemptuously.
You told me, I know this happened later in your life, about your meeting with Ben Gurion.
Well, that was just a minor thing. Yeah.
Or Golda Meir.
Yeah. We were in New York. We had a friend, Carl Alpert, who is no longer with us, who edited the American Zionist, the paper of the American Zionist Organization. And he called me one day, we were close friends. He called me and he said, would you like to meet an important person? He said, an interesting person? I said, always. So he'd come with me. He took me to the hotel, the Roosevelt Hotel, I think it was.
In New York?
In New York. And we went in and there's this short, frizzle-haired man, and he introduces me to Ben Gurion, which I shake hands with him. And Carl had brought over a cartoon they wanted to put in the American Zionist, which was very, very negative about Bevin, the prime minister.
Which year is this?
This is 40. I worked with them for that. I'm confused about the date.
Is this while you were working?
No, this must have been while I was working in the in illegal immigration. This is before we went to Israel.
So this is before you went to Israel. This is why you're buying the boats.
Yeah, this
and laundering money.
Yeah, and he said, "Would you like to meet an important person?" And he introduced Ben, and he wanted to show Ben Gurion the cartoon they were going to display against Bevin. And Ben Gurion said, "Look, we've got enough trouble with the British. We don't have to stir up anymore. Don't publish it." So that was all the end of my meeting with him. When I came back to Israel, to the States, I worked for the youth department. I established the youth department of the American Zionist Council.
This is after 1949.
Yeah, and
so after 1949, you leave Palestine, you leave Israel,
yeah,
and you go back to New York.
And we go back to New York, and
and how is your mother-in-law? Is she okay?
She was very depressed enough to be institutionalized.
Excuse me?
But she was depressed enough to be institutionalized, but she overcame it. She got well. I don't know if it was our coming there or not, but in any case, she got well.
So what are you doing after the war in 1949 in New York?
I went to the Jewish Welfare Board, which hired personnel for community centers, and I thought I told you this. There was a little black girl who they had hired as a receptionist. They were showing that they were not racist, They were leaning over backwards. They were hiring a black, and that was all right with me. And I said, I'd like to see somebody about a job in the Jewish Welfare Board. She said, you have a college degree? I said, no. She said, then I can't give you an appointment. I said, what do you mean? She said, we hire nobody that doesn't have a college degree. I said, look, grew up in Young Judea. I was a member of Hechalutz. I was in a kibbutz. I was through the siege of Jerusalem. I fought in the Israeli Air Force. I bought illegal ships. I think I have something to offer American Jewish youth. She said, not if you don't have a degree. To this day, I have a grudge against the American Jews about the Jewish Welfare Board, because she didn't have the slightest idea of what any of those things meant that I was telling her. Yeah, so that was one thing tried. Then I went to the American Zionist Youth Commission. They had youth commissions in every city in the United States, and I applied for a job with the American Zionist Youth Commission. They sent me to an interview in Washington. The interview went swimmingly. It went well. I told them what I had done, what I could do, and they were excited. And they said, look, we have to talk to the treasurer about it, but we'll send you a letter. I went back to New York and I waited for the letter, and I waited for the letter. Didn't get any letter. Finally, I swallowed my pride and I called the secretary up and I said, I thought you were going to send me a letter. She said, you didn't get the letter we sent? I said, no. What did the letter say? She said, we told you that a scout leader in Washington was willing to take the job for half the price, so we decided to save the money, and we're taking him. The look on my face, and here I was in New York, no money, no future, nothing at all, the only job I had applied for, and I was devastated. And Frida saw me. She picked up Varda, who was 3 months old, and put her in my arms. She said, there are more important things. She said, there are more important things. And I said, yes, there are. So I went back to the American Youth Commission. They sent me to Pittsburgh. And again, the Pittsburgh, it went swimmingly, but I was very cautious this time. But they did give me the job in the American Zionist Youth in the Pittsburgh Youth Commission.
So you guys moved to Pittsburgh?
Yeah. That's another long story. I think we understand the war in Jerusalem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I just want to know about you. And then eventually in 1958, what brings you back to Israel?
I'd gotten a bachelor's degree at the University of Pittsburgh, a master's degree in Western Reserve in social work, and incidentally, the way I became a social worker, I took courses at the University of Pittsburgh. I took psychology, among other things. I liked it. I did well in psychology. So when I got my bachelor's degree, I went to the head of the psychology department and asked if I could go on for a master's. He said, are you on the GI Bill? I said, yes. He said, how much more time do you have? I said, 2 years. He said, well, 2 years is enough for a master's, but a master's in psychology is just permission to study for a doctorate. Without a doctorate, you won't get anywhere with psychology. I suggest you pick a profession in which a master's degree is the terminal degree. I said, like what? He said, like social work. I said, okay, I'll become a social worker. That's why I became a social worker.
So simple.
Yeah, that's
so practical, you know?
Sometimes life makes decisions for you, you know.
So basically in 1958, you come back to Jerusalem to do your PhD.
No, yes.
Right? Your PhD in social work at Hebrew University.
No, I went to Brandeis University for my PhD.
You went to Brandeis?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you come back in 1958, you already have your PhD, is that correct?
No. When I came back in 58, I had a master's degree in social work.
Right.
I went to work for the youth department of Zionist, of the Jewish Agency. I went to work for the Department of the Jewish Agency.
Here
in Jerusalem, yeah. And I was approached to teach at the Hebrew social work at the new school of social work at Hebrew University. I had a friend, Simon Herman, who had been a French Zionist and was here now teaching at Hebrew University. And I called Simon. I said, Simon, I've been invited to teach at the Hebrew University. How do you feel about teaching there? He said,
Yeah. Hold on. Yeah.
you go ahead.
Please continue.
I said, I've been approached to teach at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. You've been teaching there. How do you feel about teaching at Hebrew University? He said, every morning when I wake up, I say to myself, to you it has been given to teach at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. I felt that way about it, and I've always felt that way about it ever since. So I taught there, and then began teaching there in 61, and in 66, the time came for me to get my doctorate, and I went to Brandeis.
So you went to Brandeis for what, just a few, two years?
2 years, yeah. And
Okay.
I was there during the Six-Day War, unfortunately. I wasn't here. But when the Six-Day War broke out, we were in Boston. Varla, my firstborn daughter, came into the living room. She was 18 at that time. She came into the living room. She stood flat-footed in front of me, and she said, Abba, I have my visa. I have my passport. I've had my medical exam. I'm going home to the Army, and you can't stop me. I said, honey, did you think I would try to stop you? She said, no, but talk to Mommy, would you? So she went back.
She what?
She went back to the Army.
She went into the Army.
Yeah. They didn't take her at first. They weren't ready for her. They didn't know what to do with her. A week passed after week, and finally we got a letter that she's in the Army. So I wrote to her, how did you do what the Arabs couldn't do? You beat the Israeli Army. She said, she wrote me back, Abba, you just have to know what tables to pound on and what corners to cry in, but don't mix them up.
It's a very wise sentence. Tell me, hold on, I'm just gonna fix something.
Still
here.
on?
The guy that I work with asked me to ask you about some specific names about your New York days.
Now, New York, what?
Your New York days with the boats. He asked me about
Basically, the name of the boats?
No.
I've never heard
No, not the name of the boats. For example, he writes to me, this is the guy who runs the nonprofit, his name is Eric. Based on the information that you mentioned to me earlier, I have a few names to ask you about tomorrow, please.
Oh, he's going to ask me?
I'm asking you right now about the names. He gave me these names because
Okay,
I talked to him about the boats and
Okay,
what you've been doing.
What are the names?
Well, one is one guy that we talked about, Sam the Banana Man.
Who?
Sam
Oh,
the Banana Man.
yeah, I didn't use his name.
But that's he knows who he is.
Yeah.
And he writes to me. What was his last name? Zamuni.
Sam.
Zemuri. Zemurray.
Wait a minute.
Who
Sam.
built the company United?
Zimuri.
Zamuri. Who built the company United Fruit?
His number was Zimuri. His name, yeah.
Who built the company United Fruit?
That's
Zamuri played a key role in securing the UN vote for partition. Did you know that?
I didn't know. I know he played a key role in getting papers for the ships.
That you told us about.
Yeah.
So he was the guy in New Orleans. Is that correct?
In New Orleans. I said Los Angeles. I didn't want to give his name.
Right. The other guy that he wants me to ask you about, he also says Zamuri was also involved in acquiring boats from South American papers for using in bringing illegal immigrants. We talked about that.
Yeah.
The other guy that he wants to ask me...
They were not South American, they were Latin, they were Central American.
Central American.
Yeah.
The other guy that he wants me to ask you about is Eli Sachlit, Schalit,
Never heard, I don't know the name.
who ran a lot of the illegal shipping operations out of the U.S., smuggling weapons.
I never met him, never heard of him.
Eli
Shalit, no.
Shalit.
No, I don't know him.
Okay. Then he asked me a third question to ask you. Any of the mafia guys who may have been involved...
Mafia?
Mafia. Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel...
Absolutely out of my knowledge. Nothing.
Out of your knowledge.
Nothing at
Frank
all.
Sinatra?
No.
None of your knowledge. Okay. And then, of course, he asked me here about Ralph Goldman.
Yeah, of course.
He says, Ralph Goldman, who just passed away this month at the age of 100, also told me that he purchased the Exodus. If you can discreetly mention his name or ask, I'd be curious about it. So what?
He might have found the money for the Exodus.
Okay.
He might have found the money for the Exodus, but the Exodus was bought by the I've forgotten the name of our shipping company now, and I signed the check.
Do you remember where your office was at the time? Was it the one on Wall Street?
It was,
Canal?
I don't know if it was a Stone Street or it might. I think it was probably on Stone Street, 15 Stone Street. The can't remember the name of the shipping company now. It'll come back to me.
He's asking. He's because Ralph Goldman was also interviewed for this project.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, years ago, I think about 5-6 years ago.
It's funny when I came back to Israel, come back to the States, and I met Ralph again. We were riding on the top of a Fifth Avenue bus, and he asked me what I'd been doing in Israel, and I said, I've been doing in Israel the same thing you've been doing in the States. He said, oh, we were both so security-minded that we didn't, there were people all around. We said nothing else about it.
Was he a friend of yours?
Ralph, oh, I knew Ralph. I knew him. I wasn't a friend of mine. I knew him.
Another name that is connected to the Exodus is Abe Polin, Polin, the late owner of the Washington Bullets, who said he was a kid accompanied his father to the meeting where they raised money to purchase the Exodus.
No. Not with.
Okay. So basically...
I was surprised there was a meeting to raise money.
Maybe it was like a secret meeting. It wasn't a fundraiser. He's not talking about a fundraiser. He's talking about a meeting.
That's right. Okay.
But basically, we already have you telling me the story about Sam, the Banana Man.
Yeah.
And it says here, the Banana Man in parentheses.
Sam Zamuri, yeah.
Sam Zamuri. What can you tell me a little bit more about him?
I told you the whole story. All I know about him is he phoned his people in South America, said the price of bananas was going to drop, and we got the papers the next day for the ship. I think it was the Pan York, but I'm not sure.
What was the original name of the Exodus again?
The President Warfield, and that was the president of the shipping company. There'd never been a President Warfield in the United States.
We're gonna end pretty soon, and we got about another 20 minutes left on this tape, and I want to try and use it to its capacity. When we look back at your story, I mean, this is your childhood in Atlanta, your involvement in young Judea, then Masada, Second World War, Japanese, Calcutta, you meeting this amazing Bonim group of Indian Jews, coming back after the war, and then actually really starting your hands-on involvement in Zionism.
Yes.
Working in New York in this crazy time of buying ships, laundering money, bribing councils to get papers and documents. You know, that was a very important time, you know, like that whole thing in New York, and then leaving that because you wanted to be as we say, boots on the ground.
That's right.
Moving to a kibbutz in the Jezreel Valley, in a cot. He gets married. Him and his wife, they live in a tent with 2 cots, and you're working in the fields. You're like, I mean, and then leaving that and going to Jerusalem, and then living under the siege, the Air Force. You know, it's like, how do you know? I read your book, and the book is, you know, it's written in a way that it's very chronological. What I'm asking is, how would you look at it philosophically? Because in the book, it's not philosophical.
Yeah,
it's just facts.
Yeah.
And stories. But I want you to try and think with me for a moment. You know, I saw pictures of you. You weren't a big guy. You weren't like, give me a gun, give me 2 guns and grenades and a knife in your mouth.
No.
And you're not, you know.
Not hardly.
No. My question is, how do you explain it? How do you look at it now when you're 95 years old, going on to 96? You look back at all these 10 hours that we spoke, and we talked. Sometimes you laughed, sometimes you had some tears in your eyes. How can you look back at it and be kind of philosophical with me right now?
Because I'm almost 96. I did something with my life. I did something meaningful. I helped people. I changed the world. I would do it all over again. Same way. Not much more I can say.
Do you have any message to the younger generations, to my generation, to our generation? Something that somebody might watch. Somebody might watch this testimony that we're taking right now in 20 years, in 100 years.
I mean, this is a very broad question. I can give you only a broad answer to people. Do what you see as right. Do what you must do. Do what you have to do. A writer has to write, a painter has to paint, a fish has to fly. Do not let that one genius in you die without using it. Now I think I'll have a drink.
Also, another question I want to ask you. Was there any time in this period, and I'm talking more about the period of your time in Palestine between 47 and 49, where you were like, holy shit, I'm going to die. I'm going to die right here, right now?
Yeah, there were a number of times. When we lived in Makov HaMaalot, the wife of a fellow student came running in one night, and she said, the Arabs are on the next block, they're going to kill us all. And for a moment, we panicked, and then we realized she was hysterical, that there were no Arabs on the next. But for the moment, it was frightening.
And I'm sure you remember that moment till today.
Of course, that's what I'm telling you. I can remember the Israeli Air Force and the American Air Force where I felt the danger, but...
You can tell me, please.
I think I might have told you that the Japanese bombed our airfield and we went into the split trench. One bomb on that split trench and I would have been gone.
Ah, with your helmet.
Huh?
With your helmet, with your
Yeah.
helmet got blown
Yeah,
up, and you
yeah,
wanted
yeah.
you took it back with you.
Yeah. No, that's enough philosophy, I think.
Okay, so is there anything before we stop, before we finish? Is there anything? I know it's hard to think, but let's just take a few minutes here and think about it. Is there anything that you feel that we've missed?
That I missed?
That we've missed together throughout these sessions that we've had? If there's anything that you feel that we've missed?
Yeah, there might have been 1 or 2 episodes instances that I don't
But do you feel that we got the book, what you wrote? I mean,
so.
I read it, you
Mhm.
know.
I think what I've said is pretty much what I said in the book.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's definitely. What I'm going to do also is I'm going to take the copy that you gave me, which I think I left here.
I think you did, yeah.
And I'm going to take that and I'm going to donate it to the Amutah so that it will be
Fine. Okay.
archived as well with your
Fine.
videotaped testimony.
Yeah.
But I guess one of the last things I wanted to ask you, and I'm asking you, is like when you look at the state of Israel today, with all of its achievements and all of its failures, because no society is perfect, is there anything that bothers you? Is there anything that troubles you?
Sure.
Looking at the future, and I would.
Sure. The same thing that bothers many of me and my friends. We're becoming colonizers. We're becoming oppressors. I know all the reasons why, and I know all the excuses for it, and I don't think we can avoid it, because as long as the Arabs won't meet with us, find peace with us, we have to defend ourselves. And that's really a terrible situation to be in. We're always on the defense.
Do you
But
believe?
we will eventually win. What did you start to say?
I just wanted to ask you, and you don't have to answer this question. Are you a person who believes, two-state solution? Have you always believed in a two-state solution? Has throughout the years, have you zigzagged?
Well, there hasn't always been a two-state solution. I believed at first that we could share the country, the Arabs and Jews, and they said we couldn't. And then you have to define what you mean by the two-state. You mean going back to 6, 7 borders, and so on. It depends. But I think that we have to do it eventually. We can't continue this way. We're going to have a Jewish state, which is a Jewish state, and let the Arabs have their state, whether it's Gaza or it's the West Bank or wherever it is. We have to do that. And we're moving in the opposite direction, unfortunately. If we continue to move in that direction and continue to expand the settlements and refuse almost any reasonable offer, then maybe what I did wasn't worth it. Up to now, it's been worth it. But if we become what our enemies say we are, a apartheid, racist, fanatical state, that's not what I wanted to build. That's not what I fought for. But I can't do anything about it now.
David, I wanna thank you. I think before I turn off the camera again, I just want you to think if there's anything that you feel that we missed or anything, because we
missed what?
I just want to ask you before I turn off the camera, you feel that there's anything that we've missed in our conversations?
In my experience, I'll remember things after you've gone. Right now, I can't think of anything else.
Okay. I want to thank you very much.
Oh, it was my
Been a
pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
That's my pleasure. I'm not a modest man, so I'm delighted to be here.
Excellent. Can you show me? Can you tell me what that is?
This is one of the first issues of Israeli identification cards. It's an ID card with a number and my personal information. I'm trying to see what it says when it was issued, but I don't see that. Incidentally, the ID card has Arabic for everything in it, in Hebrew.
Like till today, it's like that.
Yeah. No, I don't know.
Can you show me the picture of you in there? Hold on. Wait a sec.
This is after the state because it's called State of Israel Identification.
Okay, can you show me now your Air Force ranks? There we go. Tell me about these.
This is a squadron commander's rank, and it's a rank, not a job, not a role. I didn't fly and command a squadron. It's just the higher rank would be a wing commander. I don't remember them all, but they were equivalent ranks to some of the other ranks. So this would be the equivalent of between a major and a lieutenant general in the United States Army. We called it a major plus.
Did it get you a pension?
No, the Haganah didn't really give. I mean, the Army,
That was a joke.
Israeli Army doesn't give pensions. No.
And do you want to slide in there this and explain?
This is the.
And explain to me what that is.
This is the symbol of the I don't know what you would call it, the item that gave you entry to the Air Force camp in Jaffa. It was called Machane Ariel, and this says on it, Machane Ariel, Mispar 570.
Let's put that here a little. I'm going to get that a little close up of that. Machane, it says Machane Keva Aleph.
Machane Ariel it was called.
And this was your...
Air Force camp in Jaffa.
And without that you couldn't get in.
That's right.
Okay. Now it'd be nice if you could pick a few pictures for me.
No, and you know what you want?
Not really. I kind of leave it up to you. Maybe some pictures of you in the Air Force as a child, or I don't know, whatever you have, whatever you think is interesting.
There is one that I'm looking for.
Okay.
This one and there's one more. Ah, here it is. This is on guard duty.
Put it up. Just put it up. Lay it on the table.
Yeah.
Okay. You're on guard duty. You don't have
Guard
a gun. You
duty.
don't have a gun here though.
I'm supposed to be spotting a device, spotting infiltrators and so on.
Where is this picture taken?
Beta Kerem. This is Hebrew University student
That's,
at the university.
okay.
This is the entrance to our house on a call from our lot, Frida and myself.
Okay.
This is a building which I can no longer identify, but that was the result of the part of the mortaring of Jerusalem.
You're not quite sure where this is, though.
No.
Okay.
This is outside Gan Sacha, where they were building the
airstrip?
yeah. This is the corner of the Monastery of the Cross.
So that's the Valley of the Cross. That's the Greek
Yeah.
Orthodox.
That's right. Yeah. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
This is Ben Yehuda Street after the British bombed, left the truck with bombs in it.
Okay.
This is the group of Plugat, the members of Plugat Aliyah who got to Israel.
From the States.
Yeah.
Where is this picture taken?
We got together in front of some building, I don't remember where.
Jerusalem?
Yes, in Jerusalem, yes.
Is that you front center?
Beg pardon?
Oh, I see you in the back. Okay, I see you. Just trying to spot you out.
There's Frida and myself in the kibbutz.
Look at you. You look like a real sabra there.
Yeah, I think I showed you this already.
Let's see. Hold on.
American student group in Jerusalem. This is on a porch in Guinea Gard.
Yeah, that we just saw.
Did we?
Uh-huh.
I think they've seen. There's one thing else I wanted. Oh, this is my looking at my baby in Jaffa.
This is your firstborn. This is
Yeah.
Vered.
Varda.
Vada.
Yeah.
And you're wearing your Air Force uniform.
Yeah. That's in Jaffa, yeah.
Did you enjoy living in Jaffa?
Enjoy, I was in the army. This is 4 members of Plugat Aliyah. You see our tent in the background, that's our tent. Did I show you this one before?
Yes, you did.
There's something else I want to dig out for you.
Okay.
Hold on a minute.
Wait a sec, before you go. Don't go yet, don't go.
Oh,
Hold on.
oh, I'm connected.
Yeah, you're connected.